How to prune your fruit trees in fall. Hi everyone, my name is Amrita Bordake and welcome to my channel. There are two times to prune your fruit trees, late summer or early fall and winter. And I am pruning my fruit trees right now in just the beginning of fall here in my zone of 10B in California. The best way I've heard someone talk about pruning is by Orrin Martin, where he did a video about pruning and he talked about winter pruning as if you're creating a foundation of a house and you're laying down the foundation for the beautiful fruit tree that is going to produce for you for years to come. And the summer or fall pruning is what he talks about as refining the structure that you have put down, where you are going in and doing tiles, or you're doing in the roof, or you're putting in cabinets, where you're putting in these smaller adjustments that will still make the house look beautiful, but they are not as important as the foundation of a house, which happens in winter. So this is my summer or early fall pruning that I'm doing here because I was traveling in late summer. And I am pruning my apple tree, which is an Espalier fruit tree. I decided to go with an Espalier fruit tree here in my garden because I had very little space and it's a mini orchard that I'm trying to create in my garden. So I had this empty space in between the barbecue and a wall, and there was very tiny space, and I definitely wanted to add a fruit tree over there. So what I decided to do is get an Espalier fruit tree. And this is an excellent idea for anyone who wants to grow fruit trees in small spaces, or even if you have larger spaces and you have this whole wall that you get really good sunlight at and you want to utilize it. This is a perfect way to utilize that wall and grow different kinds of fruit trees on it. So how do you know what is the perfect time to prune your fruit trees? Usually the time starts around mid-August towards end of September, so we're kind of in the perfect time over here in my zone of 10B. When you look at your leaves, the terminal buds should be formed. You should not have fresh green growth coming out of the leaves. Then you would rather wait for a week or two until that growth is done. You don't want any active leaf growth on the branches. When you break a branch, you want to hear an audible snap to it rather than it just bending it. That means it's not ready yet. So first of all, let's talk about what is the goal of this summer pruning. The goal is to create short, stout branches that will be able to hold that heavy fruit throughout the years to come. And that is a mistake I made for the past 4 years ever since I got this tree. I should have started pruning it the very next year, but I was so terrified of touching it because I had never had any fruit trees, and this was my first apple tree that I had ever grown. So I wasn't sure where to cut it, what to do, and I took the time to research, and now this is how I have decided to cut it. I have let it grow for the past 4 years, and the first 2 years what I noticed is it flowered and fruited really well, and especially fruited towards closer to the main branch. But this year what I'm noticing is it's fruiting towards the lateral end of the branches, and that's a problem because if the branch bends as the fruit keeps growing and it gets heavier, I will lose all the fruit. So it makes no sense for me to have these weak branches. That's why I'm trying to create these short, stout branches throughout the base of the tree. So what I'm doing is taking a heading cut so that the branch gets thicker for the upcoming years. You have a main branch, as you can see here in my fruit tree, because it's Espalier, you have this one main branch, and then you have these laterals that they have on 3 different levels. We want to use thinning cuts in the center of the tree. So I have an Espalier tree, but you might just have a regular apple tree or any other stone fruit tree. And what you want to do is create an open canopy in the center so that the rest of the branches get enough sunlight and are not competing with each other to be able to grow into a healthy, big fruit tree. What we eventually want to happen is for the lateral branches to set fruit on the tree. And for these lateral branches, I'm using a 3-bud pruning technique. Basically, what that means is count 3 nodes, 1, 2, 3, and make a cut. I am also going to remove any rootstock suckers that are coming out of a base. Thankfully for this plant, you don't see any rootstock suckers, but if you have any that are coming out of the main rootstock on your fruit tree, just cut them off. All they're doing is draining nutrition from your tree and causing your tree to get less nutrients from the ground. So cut those off as soon as possible. Now, pruning these trees in this season, what is it going to do for them? Pruning these trees in summer or early fall is going to help them in form of function. Now, what does this mean? This means that the tree will start setting fruit even more, especially if I use the 3-bud cutting technique. It will encourage more fruit spurs to form on these branches. And these fruit spurs that you see over here are where the eventual fruits are going to grow next season. So remember, pruning in the winter for structure and pruning in the summer for form. Main scaffolding are the branches along the main trunk, as you can see over here on this tree. I'm going to look at all the branches and see if they're overcrowding the tree, if they're reducing sunlight to any different parts of the tree, and especially if I see any branches that are growing diagonally into each other, I am going to cut one of them off so that the other branch can grow more freely. I don't have this problem as much in this Espalier tree because I don't have branches growing too many into different directions. But if you do on your fruit tree, just make sure that any of the branches that are intersecting, remove the one that is growing into the tree and keep the ones that are growing outwards on the tree. There's a bit of a science to pruning your fruit tree, but also there's an art to it. You have to look at the tree and see what looks good to you as you're pruning it. And also remember, you don't have to be as nervous as I was when I didn't make any pruning cuts for the past 3 years, because you will get that time to be able to work on the tree again in winter and then again next summer, and you will slowly get to work on the tree as it grows. Don't try to cut it too much. Overall, I know that you need to keep 2/3 of the tree and cut 1/3 away. And I try not to cut too much, because then what happens is you are giving a signal to the tree to just create more leaves. So then the tree spends a lot of its energy in creating more leaves rather than actually putting out more fruit. And we want it to put out more fruit. So we want it to give it a little bit of a shock so that it puts out more fruit and it creates more seeds so that it's kind of propagating itself. That's the idea we are trying to provide. But we don't want it to go into a shock because we have just taken off a lot of the leaves off. So if you're doubtful about how much you're cutting, then I would rather you stay a little more cautious than cut a lot of the tree off. And again, you're going to get time to prune it in winter to look at it and see how it's done after summer and where the leaves are, how the tree looks like, and eventually give it a better foundation for a stronger and healthier tree to grow. I broke this one apple while I was trimming, but there are 2 more apples on this. After winter, I'm going to prune it off, and the lateral branch that is going on the other side, I might just prune off a little bit later on so I can make it stronger. The pruning is done apart from these 2 laterals, which already have fruit on them. It looks nice. If you want to see how this tree looked like last year and all the apples that I picked and the delicious apple cider that I made at home, check out this video right here.